the National Council for Disability Act, but I'll specifically talk about the affirmative action also, and which provides for, the number of a specific number of students with disabilities be enrolled in higher institutions of learning. And initially it was it started the affirmative action started in 1996.
Right.
So since then there are a number of persons with disabilities who have graduated through the affirmative action policy. So since then every year we have about 364 students with disabilities enrolling in institutions of learning. Applying for in these institutions, but out of the 364 and even more, the university admits only 64 students with disabilities, so the other number is left out. So that
300 stay out.
364, but out of that there are about 64. The government admits only 64 students with disabilities every year.
That's less than 20%.
Yeah, so the other numbers left out. Yeah, they are left out.
Honorable Samuel, talk to us a little bit more about this laws. What kind of legislation should we be seeing?
Thank you, Edmond. I think I want first to say Uganda worldwide is recognized as one of the countries that has got very good legislation for people with disabilities. Every workshop we go internationally, we say, Uganda, I think you are doing well. The only challenge we have is the implementation. You realize that I want to begin international. The UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. Uganda was the first country to sign and ratify this convention.
Yes.
And when it ratified this convention, it has its own things. Now we are asking government, how do we domesticate all the laws in Uganda so that they go in line with the UN Convention? That's where we are beginning to get blockage. But Uganda signed it very happily, everything, and we celebrated in Uganda as a disability movement. Say that was good. The Constitution of Uganda is one of the best. The issues he has talked about affirmative action, you will find it in the Constitution. Nobody will be discriminated because of a disability. A, B, C, D, these things are there. Come to the issues of the National Council of Disability Act, which puts in a council that is supposed to monitor programs that people with disability are supposed to benefit. Unfortunately, our council cannot bite because they monitor, but then where next?
Right.
They still have a challenge there.
Yes.
That's where the challenge comes in the law. We also have the People with Disability Act, which I have already mentioned. This act was put in 2006, and we had tried to line it up with the Convention on the Rights of Persons because they were almost running at the same time. The challenge we have found is it was moved as a private member's bill. Maybe that's the challenge. But we had already got the financial implication of that act, and we are okayed. So what are we doing now as members of parliament in the 9th parliament? We are now revising it in consultation with the disability movement, our friends in the NGO, to see how can we amend it. And I think it's just last week that we asked the minister in charge of disability, Honorable
Suleiman Madada, to take responsibility now as government, so that we take it up not as a private member's bill. Maybe this time we place it as a government bill, and maybe this time we might have some kind of implementation. But I wouldn't like to say that there's no implementation. There's some implementation, and I would like to recognize that at least the affirmative action in the education. You remember when the UPE started, they used to talk of 4 children. Now we have it universal. Right.
Among the 4, they would say if there's a past child with a disability, take it to school, and they would register. But what challenge with the children? Fine, they are no teachers. If there's a teacher, there's one, and this teacher is supposed to prepare lessons from P1 to P7.
Yes.
Every disabled child, oh, this is your child, this is your child. So the teachers were very limited. And since everybody wants green pasture, if this teacher moved to be a head teacher, then that's the end of special needs education. The teacher now is an administrator, is transferred to another school, and the school remains without the whatever. We do not have, we talk of inclusion. The laws of Uganda say there is inclusion, but what is there for inclusion has not yet been put in place.
You go to many schools, I think you have seen ramps there.
Yes.
But the ramps are not the ramps which are standard for accessibility. Because some of them are very stiff, but now a wheelchair cannot move in there.
Right.
You go into the toilet, some of them are very narrow. Whereas in the policy, they're supposed to build a school for special needs.
Yes.
Of course, usually they build one for both boys and
everyone.
And
boys
girls.
And girls. Yes.
Unfortunately, these toilets are also used by the teachers. They lock it and take advantage because it's wide.
Yes.
So our children still suffer to go down there. And then, of course, I would also say that in the area, currently government has given us what we call a special grant.
Right.
Some money is given to our districts, depending on the sub-counties. You realize a district like Arua gets about 60 million for empowerment of people with disabilities in economic areas.
Yes.
But still we shall have challenges because they say write a proposal. You must have been in business for 6 months. The guidelines are so stringent that some disabled people who are really poor, who would be the target, might not benefit from such a program. And sometimes if the CDO's eyes does not catch with you,
what's that CDO?
The Community Development Officer.
Yes.
Does not catch you, then you might not benefit from such a program. Because you are at the mercy of the Community Development Officer.
Yes.
And the committee is supposed to be chaired by a cow, that is the Chief Administrative Officer. At a district level, this money all goes to the districts.
Right.
Then the people are supposed to get. He had talked of attitudes. Whereas we have programs government puts in, like NADS, very clear under policy. People with disabilities should benefit, should be members of the committee. But when you go down, they tell you, we don't know where these people are.
Yes.
And when you ask the coordinators, the NADS coordinators, they say, for us, we call people to the sub-county. So you can't imagine somebody crawling to a sub-county to go and listen to the news.
Right.
And yet, in the policy, it says they must be there.
Right.
So we are asking government that these people, we might begin taking what we call a disability audit to see whether we are having inclusion in government programs. Because all government programs, at least at the level of policy, we are supposed to be included.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Walugembe, can you expand that for us a little bit? What kind of laws or implementation of laws, and specifically by which government departments, would you like to see activated if officials are listening?
Thanks very much, Edmond. My colleague Helen has gone to great length to articulate what a wonderful legislative framework we have in Uganda for people with disabilities. So it's probably important to pinpoint where the problem is and probably what could be done. The first problem probably we have in Uganda is the problem of under-resourcing disability-related programs. All programs in the relevant line ministries with the responsibility for disability appear to be the least founded. If you go to Ministry of Gender and Social Development, which has the bulk of coordinating disability programs, it really suffers when it comes to budgeting. The Department of Special Needs Education is still struggling to have its own budget code within the Ministry of Education. So does the Department or the section for Disability Prevention and Rehabilitation in the Ministry of Health. So our first point would be, could government deliberately increase budget allocation to disability programs? The World Bank and World Health Organization in their report for 2001 have increased their estimate for disability from 10% of every population to 15% per population, especially in developing countries. So it won't be too much, for example, if disabled people requested or asked for 15% of the national gross development product.
Right.
That would be fair.
That's very interesting.
Edmond, I just wanted to add something. I could give an example.
Yes, madam.
You find in UPE, the burden of buying a book
yes
is on the parent.
Yes. So
the parent is going to buy an exercise book for the child. But now with a person who has got a child with visual impairment, you're supposed to buy a braille machine where they use like a typewriter.
Yes.
That thing is not even seen in the shop in Kampala here. Let's start from our city. Yes. So it's worse down there on the ground. And how much does it cost? It's 1 point something million, and you have to go to South Africa.
Braille.
And that is the book for a blind child.
Yes.
Because the policy says the burden of buying the stationery is on the parent. So if I took my blind child to school, I'm expected to buy it a book, and the book is the braille machine.
So our UPE and USD are insensitive to PWDs.
Exactly. In terms of mobilization, we get in. When it comes to what we use It's not there.
Edmond, I would love to leave your show before mentioning two important points very quickly. One is that of support supervision. Whereas I decry the problem of underfunding, I always ask the question, but what about the little resources that are allocated? And people with disabilities and their programs do not live in a vacuum. They live in Uganda, whose public service sector is really suffering from lack of support supervision and incompetence of frontline service deliverers. And so those areas too need to be improved if we are to realize a more inclusive society in which people with disabilities live.
Thank you, Mr. Aggrey. Let's talk about the International Day for PWDs, 3rd December, which is this Saturday. What exactly does it mean? What are you going to be doing on that day?
Well, 3rd December is a very important day for, especially for us young people with disabilities. I think it's time that, it's the day that we take stock of our achievements as a disability movement, but we continue to advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities, especially in creating advocating for, policies, as in implementation of policies, laws and policies at all levels. That means, policies regarding education for young people with disabilities, issues of employment, creating awareness, aimed at, young people getting access to employment and across the private and public sectors. But also it's the time that we need to really, create awareness, as in build capacity of our young people with disabilities, because as majority of them still have a problem of self-esteem. They really cannot express themselves. We'll continue to build capacity.
Self-esteem.
Yes, self-esteem.
They feel less about themselves than they really are.
Yes.
Does that come from society?
Yes, comes from society attitudes. Stigma that imposed by the impediments by the society.
Right.
So that really makes them feel, cannot express themselves. So I think it's a moment that it's a time that we need to do more as far as building their capacities.
Right.
But also looking at, we have been working in the area of, access to higher education, especially higher education for persons with disabilities.
Yes.
And we've been trying to carry out awareness, especially in accessibility, as in access in those public universities, higher institutions of learning, making it as in the environment enabling for persons with disabilities to access learning. So I think it's also an important day for us to really carry out such awareness, also engaging ourselves in dialogue, especially involving youth with disabilities and non-disabled youth.
Okay. Yes. It's time for us to hear from you, dear listeners. Our numbers on Spectrum: 0414 348 111, 0312 260 390, 0312 261 390. And I also said you can send in your question via text. Type the word Spectrum, leave a space, question, message or comment, send it to 7197. As we wait to hear from we have a caller on the line. Spectrum, hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir, your name?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you, sir.
My name is Achirige Claudio, calling from Entebbe. I would like you gentlemen in the studio to really describe for me who is a disabled person, because I'm always getting confused. At one time, I had a schoolmate, and during the time of adolescent stage, the boy wanted to adopt his own style of walking, but he never came back into the normal walking. Right now, he's a counselor somewhere. So the disabled people really represented, or we have people who want actually to get free things just out of the way, something of that kind. And they are, at the end of the day, they end up maneuvering out of the situation, and they get money which was supposed to be responsible for the lame people, and at the end of the day, it doesn't go to the right people. How are you really going to describe that? Thank you.
Very interesting question. Spectrum, hello. Okay, let's hear from you. Mr. Walugembe, maybe you would like to tackle.
Let me go first.
Okay, let's take another call. Spectrum, hello? Hello? Okay. Yeah, Mr. Walugembe, yes?
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Didn't get your name from Entebbe.
Claudia Chivirige.
Claudia Chivirige. Now, who is a person with a disability? We say a person with a disability
Since there's someone on the line with a burning question. Your name, sir?
Hello?
Yes, please. Can you switch off your radio?
Hello?
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 You're live on Spectrum. Your name?
Yes, I'm James Kato.
Yes, James.
Hello?
James, you're live on air. Your name? Please go
I'm
on.
James Kato. I work with CDCI. My question to people in the studio are, one, what government plans are there to make sure that PWDs are reasonably accommodated into the government programs?
All right.
And secondly, indeed, if government is catering for PWDs, why wouldn't it make a follow-up on its programs that if they don't benefit PWDs, then they should make provisions that maybe next time, if they have to help them, they make sure that they are helped, other than helping other poor people and leaving out PWDs, though they are also poor people.
All right. Spectrum. Hello. Okay, let's Mr. Walugembe.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief so that my colleagues can tackle the subsequent questions that have come in. And I was attempting to define who a person with disability is. Probably it's important to mention that the concept of disability is not static. It evolves as society develops, more recognition, as society develops politically, socially, and technologically. But currently, I'll lend myself to the definition provided in the International Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And it says, people with disabilities are those with, and here we need to be careful and listen carefully, with a physical, mental, or sensory condition. So those are three perimeters: physical, mental, and sensory. Sensory is in terms of ears, in terms of eyes, which creates a limitation in the performance of activities. So not limitation in the performance of activities. If you're catwalking, but you're not limited in walking, so that's not a limitation. And in relation with the environment, attitudes, so that's also very important, environment and attitudes, you are likely to be discriminated and excluded. So there are so many perimeters you need to consider. First of all, that condition, is it physical? Is it mental? Is it sensory? 2, does it limit the performance of an ordinary activity? And 3, does it cause you exclusion and discrimination in relation to the environment and to the attitude? So if your friend were catwalking and he adopted a personalized walking style, but which does not lend itself relevant to all the other conditions, you may dismiss that person as without a disability. But the point I want to make is that at any given time,
yes,
if I had the opportunity to see properly,
yes,
and I would tell those of you who see properly,
yes,
I would never at a single moment choose to pretend not to be visually impaired, because there's a lot I've lost out.
I know. So that briefly, that also includes obesity, for instance. People eat a lot of chips and other things. Is that a disability?
Probably that's a fashion.
Because like I said, it changes with time. So would that be included briefly?
Actually, to the point that you cannot climb stairs, to the point that you can't drive a car,
right,
to the point that you can't get yourself to places, to the point that everybody looks at you and says,
all right, what
a look, then it could be a disability.
Let's take our final caller for tonight before we get more responses from our dear guests. Well, our caller we lost them. Okay, Spectrum, hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, your name?
I'm AM, calling from Muntinda.
Yes, AM.
First and foremost, I want to salute those gentlemen for their great articulation. I normally sympathize with those guys who are disabled, but in our society, we need to change them. Particularly those people in taxi, at times they use bad words against our brothers who are disabled. So to me, and I also want to salute the government for having
giving the young children the opportunity to go to schools. Because I used to be in Walugembe, there used to be a Salvation Army, but I see those children now to go to Walugembe Muslim Primary School there. I think the government has done a very big role. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think for those comments, they probably not need much qualification. Let me come to you, sir, Mr. Olweny. Talk to us about the 4 new categories of disabled people that we saw in the media today.
Yes, thank you, Edmond. They are in line with what Joseph was just saying. There are new categories of disabilities that have been coming, and we have the albinos. I think you've seen them. They have their color, I think,
as though they were Europeans.
Yeah, like the Europeans, yes. So I think those are the albinos. But also have the little people. I think this is very short. You find them very many in Kampala these days.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're the new category of disability. But also have the epilepsy. I know epilepsy has been there for a long time.
But now it's been recognized
as another category.
Which is the fourth one?
Then the fourth one is the sickle cell.
Sickle cell.
Yeah. So a sickle cell, I think it's kind of, I don't know how to define it well, but I think it's kind of it manifests itself like epilepsy.
Right.
But I think those are the 4 categories that have been,
which are new categories.
New categories.
New groups, right. Honorable Asamo, talk to us a little bit more about this day. What are you going to be doing, and what would you expect of the 9th Parliament looking forward?
Yeah, I think for the 3rd of December, this is an international day. It's celebrated all over the world about recognizing the rights of people with disabilities. And what we usually do, we come together as a family. And this day, it builds the confidence, as Olweny has told you. You know, when you see a fellow disabled, you begin appreciating that I think I'm not alone in this world. Right. So your stigma changes and your attitudes also change. The other one we need to look at, we call upon the policymakers, because this year we have the Prime Minister, who is going to be the guest of honor.
Where is the event?
The event is in Lira at the Mayor's Garden. Right. You realize that the Prime Minister in his docket has a lot of things, PRDP, NUSAF, all these things come under his docket. So we have called him purposely to hear from us and say, where are we in those programs that government is advancing? And the office of the Prime Minister, which holds disaster, holds the issue, because disasters have also caused disability. I think you remember when there was a lot of lightning, many children were rolled on wheelchairs, and yet the Minister of Health didn't even have enough.
Lightning caused some
disabilities because it strikes you and you are in that state.
You get paralyzed. So
that's already a disability. So we also take stock. And then also when we get the theme, it's a theme that we run throughout the year to demand for inclusion. Right. Because this time we are
so it's an advocacy
kind of platform.
Okay.
So and then at the 9th Parliament, we are devoted to see that we make a change and see that people with disabilities are given concern, just as my brother Joseph has said, the small cake. We do not want this business of saying we have given the disabled a special grant.
Right.
We have youth who have come out. They have no employment. I appreciate that government has said in the Income Tax Act we shall put a 2% for anybody who employs. But again,
if someone employs disabled people, they get a tax waiver
of 2%.
Yes.
But the challenge we have, we are asking the employers not to employ us as sweepers, as gatemen, as receptionists.
We want to be managers.
We want to be managers.
Right.
And already we have examples that Chartered, which has shown a demonstration. We have a blind
Chartered bank.
Yes. It has taken in a young man who is blind and is doing very well.
Doing wonders.
And they have given him he started without any machine, but now they bought him a machine to make his work better. And he's doing well.
What does he do?
What is his work?
He's in the social corporate responsibility department.
Exactly. Okay. So at the end of the day, Standard Chartered is one of our advocates. It keeps on talking about employing people with disabilities. Right. We have other institutions where we are trying to bring these people together and market this kind of percentage.
All right, we have to go. I must thank you very much indeed, our dear guests. Honorable Helen Grace Asamo, Member of Parliament representing people with disabilities in Eastern Uganda. Thank you for coming to Spectrum, Madam.
Thank you, Edmond.
Mr. Joseph Walugembe, Country Program Director at Action on Disability and Development, Uganda, with a man with a very positive attitude, I must say. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much, and government should gazette the 3rd of December like all other national celebration days. Thank you very much.
Mr. Aggrey Olweny, Executive Director, Action for Youth with Disabilities, Uganda. Thank you for coming to Spectrum, sir.
Thank you so much for hosting us, Edmond.
Thank you for tuning in, dear listeners. I've been your host, Edmond Kizito. Spectrum returns tomorrow. Up next is the news in English. Do stay tuned to Radio 1.
Just like an uncut